All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's live cooking demonstration. Just a few quick housekeeping things before we get started. We will be recording today's session so that you can view it again at a later time or share it with a colleague who may not have been able to attend today's session. We'll also be making use of the WebEx chat feature, so throughout today's presentation, if you've got any questions, comments, things you'd like to share with the other people in the audience, feel free to go ahead and put it in the chat. We'll be sure to address all of those comments and questions at the end of today's presentation. Without further ado, we will go ahead and get my camera rolling and get started here. All right, so again, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ryan Smith. I am the Wellness Program Administrator with Employee Development and Wellness Services at Georgia State University. By trade, I am a registered dietitian, so nutrition is my specialty. I'm always excited to be talking about food, exploring new recipes, and sharing ideas with people. So today we are going to be making a really, really easy recipe. This is a great thing for maybe you need a last minute lunch or something like that. You want to whip something up quickly. You don't really want to take more than 5 minutes. You might have to get back to work, or maybe you're just in a rush that day. This is great for that kind of situation. But you can also make it in advance, do a little bit of meal prep, and then have some lunch you could bring into the office with you as well. So we'll talk through all the steps. In terms of equipment, all you're going to need for this recipe is going to be a skillet and just a stove top, and then a cutting board and a knife. And that'll really get you everything you need. So we're going to be making heart-healthy quesadillas today. I am a really big fan of Mexican cuisine. I am an even bigger fan of quesadillas specifically. I really, really love cheese. However, whenever we're looking at things from a nutritional standpoint, especially heart health, we want to take a look at a couple key things. We want to look at the sodium content of a particular recipe. We want to look at the amount of saturated fat that's in the recipe, and we'll talk more about that just a little bit later in today's recipe. And then we want to look at just a combination of other things like the vitamins and minerals, the fiber, the total calories. A traditional quesadilla, we usually have a flour tortilla. We have a good bit of cheese on there. Maybe you're doing it with chicken or steak. Maybe you're doing it with just plain cheese. That's kind of how you like to do it. But today we want to pull in some of those flavors, but make it more nutritious, add heart-healthy fats, bump up the fiber and vitamins and minerals so that you can enjoy a quesadilla and still feel good about the dietary choices you've made. So in terms of the ingredients we'll be using, like I said, we're going to have the traditional things. We are going to make use of just tortillas. We're going to have some cheese, but we're going to scale back the portions and increase the vegetables and some other ingredients to make it a little more well-rounded and healthier. So let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cut up a zucchini. Now I'm using a zucchini today to put in this, or a summer squash. You're really welcome to do just about any vegetable that you think would go good in a quesadilla. Whatever you choose, we want it to be cut up into small pieces because it's got to cook with the rest of the quesadilla. The bigger the pieces of vegetable that you put in there, the longer they'll take to cook all the way through. And you don't want it to be cooked on the outside and then still kind of raw on the inside. Not a great flavor combination there. So if you're using a bell pepper, a zucchini, if you want to chop up small pieces of broccoli florets, that goes great with cheese. Whatever you're interested in doing, just make sure it's chopped into small pieces. So I'm going to be using a 1/4 cup of diced zucchini today. So I've gone ahead and cut this one in half. This is a leftover I had from some other recipe that I made. So I like to cut these in half because anytime I cut a vegetable, if it's rounded or a little bit of an awkward shape, I want to make it into a flat plane so that it can be on the cutting board and rest there safely without rocking around as I attempt to cut it. So I'm going to make a few more vertical cuts lengthwise here to get it into some longer strips. And depending on the size of your zucchini, if it's longer than your knife, you may have to kind of cut along it a little bit, but that's kind of what we're looking for. And now we're going to turn it 90 degrees and just cut in the opposite direction to get those nice little cubes. Again, smaller pieces are going to be what we're looking for here, so you can cut a little more thinly with these slices if you need to, as I frequently do. If you're dicing something and you realize, uh-oh, those pieces are a little bigger than I had anticipated, you can always run your knife back through it, and that'll take care of it and chop those up into smaller pieces. They may not be quite as pretty when you do it that way, but I'm not trying to impress anybody with the shape of my zucchini dice. So again, we only need 1/4 of a cup, so I'm going to separate a little bit of this over here, and I'll show you Like this piece, that's a decent sized piece. We cut it thin, so it should still cook, but just to be safe, I'm gonna kind of group this up and just rock my knife through it like so. If you've diced an onion or tomato before, you may do this at the end to just make sure those pieces are nice and small. And we're gonna repeat that a couple times. So zucchinis are great. Like most vegetables, there's a lot of water content, which is good. Whenever we are trying to meet our fluid needs from the day, we actually get about 20% of our daily water needs from foods that we eat. So fruits and vegetables have a high water content. So when we eat those, it's kind of like drinking some water as well. So that's one benefit of it. It's also high in fiber, which is going to help with our digestion. It's going to help us feel fuller and satisfied. It can help lower our cholesterol to a healthy level. So that's another heart healthy property is as we've got fiber in some of these foods, we are doing great things for our heart. So I've chopped that up nicely. I'm just going to measure that out and make sure that that is about 1/4 cup because we don't need too much more than that or the quesadilla will explode. Okay, that looks great. If you've seen me make wraps, burritos, pita pockets, pretty much anything I put in a tortilla, I really like to put a lot of vegetables in there. So there is a high probability of me overloading it and it just blowing up everywhere. So I'm limiting myself to 1/4 cup of the zucchini today. If you're feeling bold and want to go beyond that, I will leave that up to you. So the next thing we're going to do is we are going to make use of an avocado. And I want to talk about this because there is one aspect of this recipe that some of you watching at home or at work may kind of pause and be like, wait a second, I'm not sure I'm on board with this. So as I mentioned, I'm a really big fan of cheese. It is one of my favorite foods, but nutritionally, we do want to limit it because of the sodium and the fat content. So this particular quesadilla, and I'll show you that little amount there, is only going to use 3 tablespoons of this Mexican cheese blend. 3 tablespoons is not a whole lot of cheese. So if I've lost you there for a second, let me try to pull you back in here. So 3 tablespoons of cheese is still going to give us some calcium. It's going to give us some protein, and it's going to give us some of that salty flavor, and it'll melt really nicely and help all the other ingredients kind of combine with the rest of the quesadilla. By keeping it to 3 tablespoons, we're keeping the sodium and saturated fat, the not so healthy fat content, much, much lower. But if we take something like that out, we need to add some flavor, some creaminess back in so that we're not just eating an inferior version of a quesadilla. That's not what I'm looking to do today. So by using an avocado, we are actually going to mash this up and spread that on half of the quesadilla. The avocado will add a lot of rich creaminess to it because an avocado is very, very high in fat, but it's high in the heart healthy fats. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about how avocados are heart healthy. They're high in the unsaturated fats. Those are the ones that are better for our heart. And they're lower in the saturated fats, the ones that are not quite as healthy for us. So that's kind of how we're making up for some of that creaminess is by adding the avocado in, but still getting some of that flavor of the cheese. So I've gone ahead and cut this in half. When you cut it in half, since I skipped that step, you basically just follow along. You cut in until you hit the pit in the middle of it. It's like a big seed, acorn looking thing. You'll cut into that and just slowly rotate the avocado until you've cut all the way around. And then you twist it and you pull it apart and you'll get that half of the avocado. At this point, some people like to use a spoon to scoop the avocado out of the inside of this away from the outside, the skin. That's totally fine. If you have a particularly ripe avocado, which I think I do today, you might actually be able to just peel the skin back, which, yep, this is going to work. So you can just peel the skin directly off of it if it's nice and ripe. If it's not quite ripe yet, you may have a little more resistance as you do that and run into some trouble. So what I'm going to do, and as you peel, you're probably going to get some green avocado-y stuff on your hands. You can keep a napkin nearby and just be ready to wipe that off as needed. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut this into some small pieces. As I mentioned, we are ultimately going to be mashing this. So the pieces don't have to be a particular size. I just want them to be small enough that when I go to mash them, they won't slide around too much. So just a couple cuts there, that should be perfect. Get yourself a small or medium-sized bowl, and we're just going to drop that avocado in. Again, wipe my hands off. And at this point, if you've got something like a potato masher, that's going to be absolutely awesome for this. You will obliterate that avocado and get it nice and smashed in no time. If you don't, I'm not working with one today. That's totally fine. You can just use a spoon and press into the avocado. As you press in, if you find like the pieces are moving around or maybe the pieces are too big, you can use that tip of the spoon to just press in and you'll actually be able to cut through the pieces with the spoon. But generally speaking, we are just pressing down and mashing the avocado. And as you're doing this, again, there's not a super specific consistency we're looking for. Really what we want is just for it to be smooth enough to spread on the quesadilla, almost like you would do with guacamole. Right. And we're using a half an avocado. Really, a half an avocado will probably get you about 2 of these quesadillas. When I send out the recipe will actually be scaled to make 4 of these, just because I think it's more convenient when you have all the ingredients to go ahead and knock out 4 quesadillas. That way you can have some for meal prep, or if you want to share some with the other members of your household. But to make 4 of them, you'll use a full avocado. So each quesadilla is going to get about a quarter of it. So I'll show you what that looks like. I just mashed it there against the side of the bowl. Hopefully that's not too blown out from the light there. But it kind of looks like guacamole. We haven't added some of the other flavors like salt that you would, but we're getting our salt from the salt in the tortilla and the salt that's in the cheese. So we've got our mashed avocado. We've got our quarter cup of zucchini here. Let's go ahead and get our tortilla out and get that set up. So I'm using 100% whole wheat tortillas today. By using 100% whole wheat tortillas, we're going to get more fiber, we're going to get more protein, and we're going to get some extra B vitamins. So this is going to be a heart healthier choice. We get a lot of bonus nutrition whenever we pick whole wheat or whole grain versions of things. If you would prefer, maybe you're really watching your sodium, you could also do low sodium tortillas. They do make low sodium flour tortillas. I've seen them at Walmart, Kroger, Publix, places like that. So if you have high blood pressure, for example, and you've been told to really keep that sodium to a minimum, that could be another option. But even with the regular whole wheat tortillas, the sodium's not too bad, and we're accounting for the sodium in the other items in this recipe as well to keep it in check. So we'll go ahead and lay that down. What I would recommend doing is actually going to fold the quesadilla or the tortilla to start off with. This will give us a little bit of a dividing line there in the middle, so we know how to separate our ingredients. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the 3 tablespoons of that shredded Mexican cheese blend and sprinkle it on the side there. And visually, you can probably see that, you know, it's a little bit of cheese. It's not a super, super large amount. This is not going to be, you know, like a 2-inch thick quesadilla with cheese or anything like that, because the vegetables are going to take up a lot of space. So the next ingredient I'm going to add are going to be beans. Pinto beans work great for this. You could use black beans, kidney beans, really any type of bean you want. I frequently use this in recipes. This is a tri-bean blend from Kroger. It's got black, kidney, and pinto beans in it, so it's a nice little mix of them. We're only going to be using a quarter of a cup of this. Part of the reason for that is just for space reasons in terms of what we can fit into a quesadilla reasonably. But also, the beans are going to give us some protein, but we've got protein coming from the cheese as well, and we're going to have some Greek yogurt at the end of this too that'll add some extra protein. So we're pretty well covered on that. Next, I'm going to add in the quarter cup of diced zucchini. And as I build my little vegetable mountain here, you can see the trouble I will get into as I start to make quesadillas that are too thick. So spread the ingredients out a little bit so that it'll be nice and flat. And then what we're going to do with our avocado that we've mashed up is we are going to just spread it on the opposite side of the tortilla. This will work well because the cheese will melt and keep those ingredients stuck to one side, and then the creaminess of the mashed avocado will go on the other side of the quesadilla and help kind of seal that all in. Now, if you were in a hurry and you wanted to, you certainly could buy some store-bought guacamole in exchange for the avocado, and that would work too. I do like using fresh avocado. It's got a nice flavor to it. It's also going to be lower in sodium than if you were to buy guacamole from the store, but that's entirely up to you. And then at this point, I want to add a little bit of seasoning to it. I'm just using cumin and chili powder today. You're welcome to use whatever seasoning blend you think would be exciting. Typically, chili powder and cumin are in a lot of Mexican cuisine dishes. It's just a good flavor combination. The chili powder has a small amount of salt in it, but not very much. It's mostly going to add spice. I'm going to sprinkle a little bit on the avocado and a little bit on the beans as well. When I say a little bit, we're just doing like a pinch and a dash here. Same idea with the cumin. Add a little bit of that savory flavor to the beans, and that'll go nicely. So over here at our skillet, all we're going to do is, if you've got cooking spray, that'll actually be great for this. Spray down the skillet and then turn it up to a medium heat. If you don't have cooking spray, you can make use of just a general cooking oil. I've got some canola oil over here today. I'm just going to pour a small amount. We are trying to keep the calories a little bit lower, so we don't want to go overboard on the oil, just enough to get a little bit on the pan. Small amount of oil. If you've got something, if you're not using spray and you've got something like an oil brush, this is great. You can come in here and spread the oil around, making sure that every part of that pan has a nice coating on it to prevent things from sticking and burning. If you don't, you can actually use like a little piece of a paper towel to wipe it around, or if you heat the oil up, you can even kind of just shift the skillet around and the oil will cover it. So let's get that fire going, medium heat. Okay. So we'll heat that up over medium heat. We're just going to fold the quesadilla over now. Again, be mindful of the thickness of your quesadilla. If it's really thick, the ingredients are more likely to just kind of spill out of the side. If they do, that's okay. Keep a spatula handy and we can kind of scoop them back in. Or even if they cook by themselves on the skillet, it is not the end of the world. We'll try to pinch the edges of it too. If you can kind of seal it a little bit, that will help with some of those ingredients. So we got that over medium heat. We're just going to throw that in there. And you're going to cook for about 2 minutes per side. You're just looking for the tortilla to become a golden brown on the outside. The cheese will melt. That zucchini will cook through. The beans will get heated up. It'll be really nice. What I recommend, my stovetop, it's gas. It does tend to cook pretty quickly, certainly faster than an electric stovetop would. So if you're working with gas, keep a closer eye on it. Feel free to turn the heat up or down if you need to. You'll often start to smell if it's gone a little past that golden brown we're looking for. So try to just pay attention to your senses. And after about a minute or two, you can use a spatula and just flip it over and cook the other side for about 2 minutes. So while that's cooking, let's talk about the other things that we're combining this with. To balance the plate out and make it a little bit nicer, I've just got about a cup of some salad greens there. You could do chopped lettuce or something like that. Put a little bit of a vinaigrette or something on top of it to give it some flavor. And then I've got about a 1/4 cup of Greek yogurt here, low-fat, plain Greek yogurt. If you've seen some ideas for recipes before to make them heart healthy, a lot of people will recommend swapping full-fat sour cream or sour cream out for Greek yogurt. The cool thing that happens when we do that is we still get that nice, cooling, sour dairy flavor. We get a lot of protein and we get less calories overall. So this works really well with this. It's great for putting on top like sour cream, dipping it in there, doing that sort of thing to just increase the flavor while adding protein and calcium to the overall meal. The other thing that we're doing whenever we add dairy products like this is we're adding some potassium as well. Potassium kind of works counter to sodium. As sodium makes our blood pressure go up, potassium can help balance it out a little bit within the body. Most of us get a little too much sodium in our diets on an average day and not enough potassium. We can get potassium from dairy products and fruits and vegetables, so that's why you'll see me trying to incorporate and pull them in. It's probably been long enough. I'm going to check the back side of this. Yep, that looks perfect. So I'm going to flip it, and I'll show you that golden brown that I'm talking about. When I flip it, I am kind of just going to spin it around inside the skillet for a bit to pick up oil. I want to make sure both sides of the tortilla have some oil on them so they cook nicely and don't burn or stick. If you are a vegan or you are looking to avoid or reduce the amount of dairy products you're doing, we do have some substitutions you can do here. Certainly, it's a quesadilla. We expect there to be cheese inside of there. There are vegan cheese substitutes. In terms of how that cheese melts, it's a little different than traditional cheese, but you could make a quesadilla out of it. The nice thing about the avocado that we're adding in here is it adds that rich creaminess, that nice fat texture to it, so that using something like a vegan cheese with it, I think it would blend nicely. In terms of the yogurt, you could certainly use a plant-based yogurt instead of a dairy yogurt to still get that sort of sour cream sensation. They do make vegan sour creams and things like that in order for you to try to experience some of those flavors if you are strictly going for a plant-based diet. Now, the second side of the quesadilla tends to cook faster than the first side because the skillet has heated up. So I am going to pull this guy over here and chop that up real fast. The other thing, we mentioned some plant-based options. The other thing that you can do is you can add some animal protein to this if you're interested. Chicken goes great on quesadillas. Some people will do steak quesadillas. You could do beef, anything like that that you're interested in. In keeping it heart healthy, chicken is definitely a good choice. That is a heart healthy animal protein. So having some just like shredded chicken inside of the quesadilla, I think could be really, really nice. And I'm just going to cut this into 4 pieces here. And I will try to show you. Oh, that's a good piece to show you. You can see there is a decent bit of thickness to that because we added the avocado, we added the zucchini, the cheese is nice in there and melting. We got the beans. It's a pretty good combination. Let me lay that out here so you can see what that looks like. And I think overall, in terms of the kind of presentation there, it looks nice. There's that golden brown on the tortillas. If you were here, you could smell the cheese. I love the smell of cheese as it's cooking like that. The cheese is nice and warm and kind of oozing out the sides there. Again, you could pick up one of these slices and dip it in the Greek yogurt. You could kind of put a dollop on top of it. And then you've got some extra greens there on the side just to give you some extra nutrition. Now, in terms of the nutrition facts, we're going to share those with a copy of the recipe. We'll send that out in a follow-up email. But I can cover some basic things right now. This recipe, because it's a heart-healthy quesadilla, it's about 400 calories, which is a great place to be if you are doing some weight management things, trying to keep your lunch calories to a smaller amount. That's a great target to be at. It's got a little over 20 grams of protein, again, coming from the cheese, the beans, the Greek yogurt, and there's even a little bit of protein in our tortilla because we're doing the whole wheat version of it. In terms of fiber, there's actually more than half of your daily fiber goal in this one meal, which is excellent. If you're trying to add fruits and vegetables, maybe you're trying to lower your cholesterol a little bit by adding that fiber in, this is a great meal to do it with because there's about 15 total grams of fiber in the recipe. I mentioned there was some calcium and potassium coming from a couple of our different ingredients. There's about 30% of your daily calcium and a similar amount of your daily potassium. So as we go through the list, we've got some healthy fats, we've got healthy carbohydrates from our whole wheat tortillas, protein from a variety of different sources, lots of vitamins and minerals. And the best part is we keep the sodium very, very low in this recipe. I believe it's about 400 milligrams total of sodium from the cheese, the chili powder, and the little bit that's inside of that whole wheat tortilla. So overall, very, very heart-healthy approach to a quesadilla. There is flexibility here, though, if you want to make it your own. I kept it to 3 tablespoons of cheese, but if you wanted to bump it up to 4 tablespoons, which is equal to 1/4 cup, you could experiment with that and see what it's like. Whenever we're trying to make healthy changes to our diet, the goal is not necessarily to go from, being down here to all the way up here in one jump. We can make little changes, so slowly reducing the amount of cheese you do, adding more vegetables. Again, you could do zucchini, bell pepper, mushrooms, broccoli, so many different vegetables you could add in here and make it your own. But try experimenting with smaller amounts of cheese, higher amounts of vegetables, doing those whole wheat tortillas instead of just your traditional white flour tortillas. And those little changes will make a big nutritional difference. So that's actually it for this one. It's really simple. Like I said, you can knock that out in about 5 or 10 minutes. The recipe I'll send will be for making 4 at a time, but you can scale it up or down as needed. These do hold up in the refrigerator very well. You can heat them up in a microwave, or if you've got like a toaster oven anywhere, they're great to pop in there, and then you can eat them again nice and warm. I'm going to turn over here and just see if we've got any comments in the chat that I can address before we wrap up. Okay, yeah, so there definitely a question here about not being a fan of zucchini. What's the best substitute veggie? So I covered bell peppers, I think is a really, really good option. People love putting bell peppers and things like this. If you like spicier foods, jalapenos would certainly be fun. I'm always looking for ways to put jalapenos in dishes because I do really like the flavor that it brings. Jalapenos, bell peppers, mushrooms, like I said, small pieces of chopped broccoli florets would work really well in here too. Some people will actually put spinach inside of the quesadilla. I have some mixed greens here on the side, but there's no reason why you couldn't just cook it inside the quesadilla itself. They'll cook down a lot, so when you pile greens in there, your quesadilla may be really thick, but remember, as it heats up, they will condense and reduce in volume, so it should end up fitting in there nicely. So most of the vegetables you can think of that you could chop up like that will work well in this, so experiment with them and see what you like. I've definitely made it with broccoli, with spinach, with bell peppers before, so I can attest that all of those do work and taste great. Okay, I see a question here about, oh, this is someone saying that quesadillas are one of their favorite things to eat, and tacos. I'm right there with you. Taco night was always my favorite night as a kid growing up. I liked being able to choose all the different ingredients that went into it. And their question is, or they're just saying that they would use dairy-free sour cream though, because they don't handle yogurt particularly well. So absolutely, dairy-free sour cream or a plant-based yogurt, something like that. If you're using yogurt, you do want a yogurt that's not like vanilla or sweetened, just because I don't think those flavors would go particularly well with the quesadilla itself. Of course, you could always eat a yogurt like that just on the side as part of the meal. This is kind of constructed to allow all these ingredients to work together, but there's nothing stopping you from, just having a yogurt on the side or adding a piece of fruit or something like that. We want to try to pull in all the different food groups when they work together. That's great, but it's also fine if you've just got, a side of a different dish to bring in some of that nutrition. So whatever works for you and makes the recipe fit your lifestyle, that's what we're looking to do. Okay, I think I have answered the questions. Let me do another quick look over. All right, I think that is all of them. Of course, as always, if you've got additional questions, you can reach out to us. I mentioned we're going to be sending a copy of the recipe, the nutrition information, and a copy of the recording to your emails. In that email, there's also going to be a link to a quick survey. It takes about 5 minutes or less. Basically, you can just let us know what you thought of today's event, if the recipe sounded good to you, if the presentation was okay, and if you've got ideas for future recipes or future events. We're always looking for ways to improve what we do, so we'd love to hear your feedback. Additionally, if you are not already on our mailing list, we do events like this all the time. We do cooking demonstrations about twice a month. Tony, my coworker, she's awesome. She does stretch breaks and workouts. We do yoga and meditation. We have a snack and share support group where you can come and get some emotional support and just talk about things that may be affecting you in your life right now. So we've got programs for a variety of different things. If you're not on our mailing list, you can email us at edws@gsu.edu. We'll get you put on there and you'll be subscribed to our weekly emails where we're sure to announce all the different other events that we have going on. In terms of this week, we've got one more event. Tomorrow, we will have a virtual guided meditation. So if you're interested in that, that's at 12 p.m. You can log on. It's a 30-minute session, just a nice opportunity to kind of rest, be quiet, and listen to the instructor. She'll walk you through some really, really nice meditation practices that will get you relaxed as you head into the weekend. So with that being said, I'm checking the chat one more time, and it looks like we are good. Thank you again, everyone, so much for attending. Keep an eye out for that follow-up email, and we hope to see you again soon. Thank you.